I'd like to call this regular city council meeting of June 5th to order. Would you please call the roll?
Kistler? Here. Coos?
Here.
Zingy? Here. Matani?
Here.
Bradbury? Here. Gass?
Here.
Finnegan?
Here.
Stevenson?
Here. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Ketchikan City Council would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of this land in Ketchikan, the Tongass Tlingit people. Bring us down to public hearing on ordinance number 25, 2004, amending the Ketchikan Municipal Code, subsection D of the section 2.40.030 entitled Library Advisory Board. Is there anybody here to speak to that? Hearing and seeing none, we'd close that public hearing. Move on to the next one, public hearing on ordinance number 25, 2002, amending the Ketchikan Municipal Code, chapter 11.12, telecommunications services and rates. Is there anybody here to speak to that? Hearing and seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Under communications, we have a proclamation for Pride Month. Abby, Councilman Bradbury.
Whereas the city of Ketchikan is welcoming and inclusive community committed to serving all residents with fairness and respect. And whereas lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and two-spirit LGBTQIA2S+ individuals are valid members of our community, including city employees, educators, business owners, residents, and families. And whereas Pride Month is celebrated each June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in New York City, a pivotal moment in LGBTQ history, when patrons of the Stonewall Inn stood up against police harassment and discrimination, sparking a nationwide movement for LGBTQ rights and liberation. And whereas the city of Ketchikan upholds the principles of equality, dignity, justice for all people, and reaffirms this commitment through its anti-discrimination ordinance, passed unanimously on July 16, 2020. And whereas Pride Month is a time to celebrate the resilience, diversity, and contributions of the LGBTQ community, while also recognizing the ongoing struggle for full equality and inclusion. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the city of Ketchikan does hereby proclaim June 2025 as Pride Month. We encourage all residents to honor the history, contributions, and continued fight for justice by the LGBTQIA2S+ history or community, and to stand united in the commitment to equity, respect, and human rights for all. Signed this 5th day of June 2025, Bob Sievertson, Mayor.
Is somebody here to receive it tonight?
Really appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Good night.
All right. Thank you.
I like this note that says, please speak directly into the mic. Very direct. Good evening, members of the City Council and Mayor Sievertson. I would like to first acknowledge that we are gathered on Tlingit Ani, the lands of the Tontaquan and Sanyaquan Tlingit. My name is Ryan McHale. I'm the president of the Ketchikan Pride Alliance, and we are dedicated to providing education, support, and aid to our local LGBTQ+ community and allies. I'm joined today with our Secretary, Samantha Funk. I want to extend my deepest thanks to Mayor Sievertson and the City Council and the residents of Ketchikan. Your continued commitment to equality and inclusion makes me proud to call this place home. Thank you for welcoming us here today, and for recognizing the importance of Pride Month and the meaningful contributions of the LGBTQ+ people in our community. Your support sends a powerful message to our community that we are seen, valued, and celebrated. Your leadership is essential in defending hard-won progress, inspiring future change, and setting an example for elected officials at every level. In fact, Mayor Severson and a few members of the council were serving on the city council in 2020 when we passed the non-discrimination ordinance, making Ketchikan the fourth community in Alaska to extend protections for the LGBTQ plus community. So thank you for that. We have LGBTQ plus people, sorry, it is a mouthful for me as well. And the letters keep adding on and eventually will come for numbers. But we have always existed. We have always been here. In the past 5 years, we've seen important steps forward, from advances to legal protections to growing visibility and community support. Progress is happening right here in Ketchikan. There's still work ahead, and we are committed to doing that work together. We are here to help build a more just and inclusive future for everyone in our community, and we are proud to be your partners in that mission. I would like to warmly invite you all to join us for our Pride Month events. You'll find a calendar of our events circulating, and I'll follow up with an email. In particular, I want to invite you to our Stonewall commemoration and Pride Parade on Saturday, June 28th, marking the 56th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. We'll gather at 10 a.m. at The Rock, weather dependent. If not, we'll be at Birth Free Shelter. We'll have a series of speakers and dance groups performing, followed by a parade along the promenade to Birth 4 and back. Afterwards, we'll continue the celebration at our annual Pride Picnic at Buggy's Rotary Beach from 12 to 4 p.m. with music, burgers, hot dogs, and we'd love to celebrate with you all. Gunal Chish, thank you for your time and your continued support.
Thank you. Brings us down to persons to be heard. Do we have anybody to speak to the council tonight?
No
one signed up.
Oh, no one signed up tonight.
No one signed up tonight. Is there anybody that wishes to speak to the council that hasn't signed up tonight? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move to consent. Second.
Been moved and seconded. I would like to add item 6B. The consent, I'd like to add new business item A and new business item D to consent.
It's item D, right? D for dog.
D for dog, yes. All right, Madam Clerk, would you like to read the items?
Approval of minutes, regular city council meeting of May 15th, 2025. Ordinance number 25004, amending the Ketchikan Municipal Code subsection D of section 2.40.030 entitled Library Advisory Board, sponsored by Councilmember Finnegan and Mayor Severson, second reading. Award of contract number 2531, wastewater treatment plant A improvement, Southeast General Contractors, LLC. Assignment of tideland lease and security assignments of tideland lease under ADL 105576. A 2.5% cost of living adjustment for non-represented general government and KPU, Ketchikan Public Utility employees for 2025. Resolution number 252968, leveling a general property tax for municipal purposes upon all real and business personal property in the city of Ketchikan for the year 2025, providing for the collection of taxes due in 2025, and prescribing penalties and interest for delinquent taxes. Council review of liquor license renewals, beverage dispensary, the Potlatch Bar, a package store for Cape Fox Lodge, and a beverage dispensary tourism for Cape Fox Lodge. Ordinance number 252002, amending chapter 11.12 of the telecommunications service and rates of the Ketchikan Municipal Code in second reading. Resolution number 252964, authorizing the submittal of a $75,000 application to the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, ADEC, for funding through the Alaska Clean Water Fund for the Fiscal Sustainability Planning Project. And there's one more. Update master services agreement between the City of Ketchikan, DBA, Ketchikan Public Utilities, and City West Cable and Telephone Corp.
Before we vote on it, there was a request by a council member for Lacey, could you talk a little bit about item C in the wastewater treatment plant improvement?
Sure, Your Honor. This is the second phase of a two-phase project for the Public Works wastewater treatment plant. The first phase of the project involved some modifications to wastewater treatment plant B, I believe. And we do have the Public Works Director here if there are additional questions. To provide a window for part of that facility, and also allowing the facility to accommodate a forklift on the second floor to better service the oh gosh, I was gonna say the baler, but that's not what it is. Seth, help me out. So this is the second phase of the project to continue to make modifications to the facility so it can operate better. I believe there's some curb involved. Seth, do you mind giving a little bit more detail on this?
Sure, no problem. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members, Seth Brackey, the Public Works Director and Engineering Manager. Acting Manager Simpson was correct in that this is at our treatment plant A, and this is for our screens. So the concrete curb will go around where our wastewater screening system is. That'll keep any splash over in the area it should be, not in the area where it shouldn't be. So that building has been somewhat gutted for the last couple of years awaiting this project. We deferred it last year, so it's definitely time to get this completed.
Yes, Jay.
Timeline on, questions, John. Timeline on how long this project will take, and are we looking at any cost overruns?
So this project's scheduled to be complete by contract November 30 of this year. And we don't anticipate any major changes. I think we got a good competitive bid. We've received 2 bids. This was the lowest. And we've had a good working relationship with this contractor. They've completed other projects for us previously. So I think this would be good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing, seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Gas,
Yes.
Finnegan,
Yes.
Booth,
Yes.
Kistler,
Yes.
Zingy,
Yes.
Matani,
Yes.
Bradford.
Yes.
Thank you. That moves us on to unfinished business. Item 6A, Public Works Administration compensation and alignment. There is a motion, I believe, already in place that we deferred.
No, that,
No?
it was just postponed to this meeting.
Okay.
So there is a recommended motion though, although by staff. Or this is just a postponed motion, amending the,
All right. So there is,
kind of what happened, the resolution motion was made, but then we amended it just to give the supervisor for the, is it wastewater? So that motion actually passed. And then
Mhm.
this, because we split the question, it was just postponed to the next meeting, which is tonight.
all right. So we just open it up for discussion again.
Well, there, or.
Is there a
we need it-
motion?
Yeah, there's a recommended motion on the agenda there.
Anybody have that in front of them? Yes.
Yes, that's it.
I move the city council direct staff to prepare a resolution for city council consideration to amend the city of Ketchikan compensation plan to provide for pay equity adjustments and reclassifications for the public works director and assistant public works director positions, reflecting a 10% wage differential above subordinate positions.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Council. Yes, Jay.
It's very difficult. I know our employees are worth it. I know it is good to have supervisory employees at differential rate than our union and other employees. However, again, we are using funds that were meant for hiring employees. And then we are looking at taxes and we are looking at other rate increases. I think this should have been tabled because we know we have contract negotiation with unions at the budget time and the budget proposed. It's very difficult. I know our employees are worth it for me to support this.
Anybody else? So one of the things we should talk about is the, how this is gonna be paid for, because it comes out and billed to multiple departments. Is that correct, Lacey? Do you
It
wanna go
does.
through them a little
Your
bit?
Honor, yep. So these three positions that we have proposed for city council for consideration of reclassifications, these are public works engineering positions, but also moreover, they oversee all of the public works departments. So how they are funded is a mix of different funds. So it's public works sales tax, it's solid waste fund, it's harbor fund, port fund, wastewater fund, and water division. And it may seem strange because some of these are not, such as water division, are not typically part of general government. But again, because these individuals or these positions oversee all engineering work and capital projects, they are compensated by those other funds that are sort of outside what you would typically think of as public works departments.
Dick?
Yeah, I guess I've got a problem simply because one's how we're gonna pay for it. I don't necessarily agree that we have to use quote a 10% raise to do it. As we go through this, and I don't know where we're gonna go with it, but I think it's somehow or other we need to go back and look at the plan that this is based on. And maybe we review it at budget time. And maybe it's only 5% or maybe it's 10%, but we need to take a look at how we're going about this. Because, there's gonna be people that have been in the service or on our service for years, and they may be up there and you hire somebody new and they're gonna be, the pay grade you have to put them in is way high. And we're not taking nothing into consideration. We're just saying we got a plan that umpteen nonprofits back east said, here's what you ought to be doing. And so I'm comfortable with 5%, not comfortable with 10%, but I can't see the numbers here unless they're here for each of those positions we're talking about. And to know just what I would do. But I'm not comfortable with automatic.
Yeah.
I know, I think
Well, that.
Judy had her hand up earlier.
I guess from my perspective, I'm wondering why we can't look at these types of things during budget. I understand that there has to be a differential between the positions, but it seems like, especially like, I don't know about you guys, but the last few meetings, all we've been doing is raising rates and giving jobs. And I'm like, where's it all coming from? And then once we get to budget, I think I'm not gonna probably agree to any of this. I mean, I just think at some point we gotta stop here and figure out what we're doing. And I look tonight at every other item on here is more money out of people's pockets. At some point, don't we have to say, well, we have to look at our needs versus our wants? I appreciate all these employees, and I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but I'm just saying right now, we have such a bigger picture. If we decide on this tonight, and then we have all these other capital projects that we have to do, we have all these other folks that want funds as well that are deserving, negotiations that have to take place. How are we gonna pay for all this? I mean, I think we need to start doing things differently than what we've been doing, and it's not pleasant. But I agree, I think 10% is a lot. But at this point, I don't think we should do anything until we're sitting at the table, looking at the whole budget and making sure we can afford all this stuff. So I'm not sure we can. And if somebody can tell me that we absolutely can without raising any rates and raising any sales tax or whatever else you want to raise, I'm not okay with it.
Well, that.
Well, I mean, some of the points that were made in the packet, and the biggest one being that if someone moves up to a position in a temporary position, that's an automatic 8% increase. So a 5% increase would not even cover that kind of a situation. And And I know I've been in jobs where, I was not paid, fairly above what everybody else was doing. And, I don't like it. There does need to be a threshold. You can't, I mean, the one we dealt with last week was upside down even. But with that 8% already in the books, how could we go 5%? It's not even as much as we would pay somebody to temporarily go in that position. And it's not, necessarily, I mean, if another person, there's no way to know at budget time how much you're going to have to increase anything. There's no way until we get the final, things from the unions and what that is going to be. All they can do is estimate. There's no way they can tell you exactly what it's going to be. And so to the best of their ability, they estimate at budget time how much we're going to have to raise everything. And that's why we have left it so that there's no cap, the 5%, on wages, because we just don't know. And now is when we have to deal with it. We finally have what the rates are going to be, and they need to be adjusted. People that are in supervisory positions can't be paid too closely than the people under them, because they'll just quit and say, "Hey, well, I'll just go. I'll be a nobody," and for that much difference, it's not worth the headaches. We need strong leadership, and if you're going to have strong leadership, they need to have a standard buffer. And if we're not going to pay the standard buffer, then we're not going to be getting the people we need to supervise.
Thank you. Jack.
I'll be echoing Councilmember Kistler to some degree in this regard. When I was kind of working through the fog of my own understanding of this whole arrangement, the two paragraphs that jumped out to me from Mr. Alderson's memo were the same that Councilmember Kistler just referenced regarding, and I'm quoting, the City of Ketchikan's own compensation plan explicitly provides for an 8% wage increase when an employee is promoted or temporarily assigned to a higher level position, and that a 5% differential would fall below this threshold and undermine the city's own compensation structure by providing less than the standard 8% increase that even temporary acting assignments receive. I very seldom feel like any of the adjustments we make to wages or the creation of new positions indicate any kind of bloat or waste. I think the folks who are working in the city day to day, week in, week out, understand what their departments need and make requests for adjustments accordingly. On those occasions where I have felt that a position was one that we could do without, I have voted against it or have voted for a reduction. But in this case, I feel like meeting this threshold is the least we can do for these individuals who do have increased an expanded scope and expectation of supervisory leadership. So I think 10%, it's a bit of a difficult bite of the cookie here, but it's the least we can do to stay at least somewhat competitive. We all know how difficult it has been to fill positions for the city, how specialized positions are incredibly difficult to fill. And I think any extent that we can go to make our wages competitive overall goes a long way toward keeping morale high, keeping retention high, and recruiting new candidates for positions when we're looking to fill empty positions. So I'm in favor of this 10% increase.
Anybody else? So, Lacey, a couple questions. First of all, the 10% that we're talking for, since it's spread out over multiple departments and projects, is there presently enough funds in this year's budget to meet those needs?
Your Honor, there are, as the city council is aware, we've had several longstanding vacancies within the Public Works Engineering Division. That has equated to approximately $170,000 worth of savings in personnel services and wages accounts. The 10% that staff is recommending as a differential for these three positions is just under $52,000 for the 2025 year. So we have ample funds in this year's budget to support this level of increase. Again, in the memo, I did point out what the increases would need to be if the council wanted to solely fund this additional expense. Those increases are fairly minor. I mean, they're tenths of a percentage. I'm not saying they're not insignificant. I understand how these all stack up over time. But independently raising rates or taxes to fund these position differential increases is really unnecessary with the savings that we have in the budget.
Judy,
But do we have those, question for the manager. Do we have those savings because we haven't filled existing like positions that we're looking for? So aren't we? I mean, so does that mean you're gonna come back to us if you manage to fill those positions? And so then it'll be,
So not this year, Councilmember Zengi. So the savings is the savings. So please do not mistake me that in a future year, yes, the personnel services and benefits expenditures for this division will be higher because we make this increase. So this is, while there are funds, there are savings in this year's budget, that obviously doesn't last in perpetuity.
Abby?
Question for the manager, through the mayor. When you guys did the budget for this fiscal year, it was an unbalanced budget, correct? Where we were in a deficit for funds and pulling from reserve?
Yes, with certain funds, I will specify certain funds.
So I hear a lot that, well, we're saving money here because we didn't fill it. And since it's there, we should use it. But in reality, we never really had the money to pay for that because we're in deficit in certain funds. And so I'm worried if we keep going in this revolving door for each department, instead of thinking of a overall program that can be budgeted into our budget. I'm worried that we're kind of not remembering what we did before to go into this one and going on to the next one. So I know it was mentioned earlier, looking at these situations, the differential, what percentage can our budget handle? Is that something that we can collectively do at the budget? Because as we've seen, this is the third one that's come in. I know we have other departments who are, and other managers or positions that don't have that differential all the time. So I know this isn't going to be the last time we ever see this. So maybe we need to look at what is our policy and does that policy work within our budget to actually afford all of it? Not just saying this department's important, this department's not. Like overall, we need to fix all of the departments. How can we afford all of them? If we do one here, we need to make it equitable for the other departments as well. So I'm just worried about, like, I think we need to look more broad and make sure we can cover everybody equitably versus just picking and choosing which areas get that differential. And I feel like that's where we're at right now.
Your Honor, if
Yes.
I could speak to that for a minute. I absolutely understand where you're coming from, Councilmember Bradbury. It feels that, this is just one of a string of corrections we need to make to maintain that differential. With both of the differential issues that we brought forward to the council, these were the direct result of bargaining. They're not inherent flaws in our compensation plan. Again, the compensation plan, we try to maintain that 10% differential between supervisory positions and those that they supervise. Through bargaining, that was disrupted, which is what we're trying to fix now. Not knowing what the future holds, I will tell you this, that after we make this adjustment, we currently do not identify any other discrepancies that violate that 10% differential within the compensation plan. Would you agree with that, Jason?
I would agree.
So I understand the frustration in hearing another one of these types of situations in which we need to make an adjustment, but there are no other flaws within our compensation structure currently. I'd like to also add that while I absolutely agree that looking at the city's compensation plan as a whole is a good thing to do. If the council will recall, we did that in 2019. We did a compensation plan update and analysis. That was very expensive to do because what it revealed was that the city's wages were about 6% below market. So we had to make massive adjustments for both general government and KPU. In fact, we didn't implement some of the ones for KPU for the craft positions. And we ended up dealing with those separately through bargaining. We can certainly plan for a compensation plan update, but I will say this, because there is still to this day a lot of hard feelings about perceptions among staff about what they should or should not have received because of that compensation plan. The city needs to understand if they're going to go through a compensation plan and really take a look at what everybody is paid. You need to have a plan on how you're going to fund it. Dealing with discrepancies via COLA or regrading when we see that things are out of market, while it may seem nitpicky, it is a simpler way to deal with those compensation inequities than going through a compensation plan analysis. The last time we did that between general government and KPU, it cost nearly $2 million to make those corrections. I don't know if the council and the community is willing to make those corrections by adjusting rates and taxes at this time.
Thank you.
Can I clarify since the statement was made online?
Okay.
Just clarify. I am not advocating for a compensation plan. I'm advocating for looking at all of these increases or discrepancies that come from bargaining all as one program, like us looking at it all and saying, okay, we made this decision. Now we caused this. Now how are we going to fix this? I fully agree. Compensation. Let's not go there. But I just think we need to look at, okay, we still have more bargaining agreements to work out, which is probably going to cause things down the line again. So I was just saying, like, let's get through the bargaining and then let's look at everybody and say, okay, now we gotta fix what we just did and how do we pay for it? So that's what I wasn't going for compensation. Just wanted to clarify.
Through the chair for the acting manager, just a clarifying question on that $170,000 that you identified. Are those for budgeted funds as they would have been expended to date or over the course of the year if those positions remained unfilled?
So it's to date.
To date.
To date through vacancies. So luckily, we have actually been able to fill some of those positions. So we won't continue to add to that savings as the year goes on. But to date, it's about $170,000 through vacancies.
And one follow-up.
Yes.
Some have been filled, which is great to hear, and others remain unfilled, I imagine.
I think we just have, Seth, do we have just, you don't mind speaking to vacancies within engineering?
Sure.
Thank you.
And this is just an engineering.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to speak to engineering, so we had a project engineer that had worked for the city for extended period, that then took a job with another private company. So that was a big loss for us. We were not able to fill it with another project engineer. Instead, we had to drop it down to an engineer in training. We do have him coming up. He starts on the 16th of this month. We're happy to have that filled. So that will bring a cost savings rather than hiring a project engineer. Our project manager position is currently unfilled and we're recruiting and we've gone through interviews. We don't have anyone right now who's advancing, but we'll continue to try to get that position filled.
Thank you. Yes.
I would just follow up on Jack's with the manager. So just to also clarify the other part of that, the 52,000 that this would cost for this year is only for this half year, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So from this date going forward.
And then next year, we're gonna have to look at taxes or something else. And every year going forward, guys, keep that in mind too.
Jay.
And through the chair, just for my clarification, so now we're gonna ask for $52,000 because you have the 170,000. What are you looking down the line in total ask for year 2, year 3, year 4? How is this going to, where is this going to end?
Never ends.
I guess to parrot Councilmember Kistler, Councilmember Matani, it doesn't end with authorizing COLAs, having step increases for these positions. The cost of personnel is always rising. Where it can go backward is when we see retirements or vacancies and we hire at lower level positions, people with less experience. But we also want to keep the folks that we have, the people who are experienced that bring a lot to those positions. And to do that, we do need to make periodic adjustments so that we are keeping their pay relevant with the market. We've discussed at length with the council through our bargaining process, through the budget process, that there will need to be revenue adjustments made. There's just no getting around that as expenses increase, not just personnel expenditures, but many other expenditures as well that are outside the city's control. Different supplies, freight, things of that nature, things that are completely unavoidable. Those adjustments do need to be made. There will need to be increases.
Thank you. So, in the recent past, there was money put into as a budget item to look at our compensation plan that was drawn out, and then the city manager took that on herself and managed to bring some equity and raises and reclassifications through that process. I don't know if it was a great process or not, but it probably answered some of the needs that were there. And as as a business or as a government, one of our biggest jobs is to manage in a business-like manner and hopefully be able to fund our personnel. When we talked about spending at a deficit out of the reserves, if I remember right, the majority of that went to capital projects and not to operational costs. Operational costs were pretty flat, but they're meeting their needs at that particular point in time, if I remember right.
Generally, Your Honor, yes, because again, council direction for budget was to maintain a 5% increase and no more for operational expenditures, accepting personnel expenditures.
Okay. And then again, as you had mentioned earlier, this happened through an outlier when you went through negotiations and raised an individual position up to an equitable wage within the union negotiations, which triggered this particular operation within engineering. As we look forward, I would rather take up this discussion before budget because it's going to take a lot of time. And I don't want to eat up our times that we have to be going through the budget. If we have a policy set in place or an understanding in place before we sit down at the budget table, I think I'd appreciate that more. It'd be easier to go through that process. So I would assume that if you're going to be doing budget meetings, we should have either within those meetings or another meeting in regards to personnel costs and some comparisons as we go through this process, and maybe even just a look into the future for guesstimates about how this, you look at what's happened in the past, you probably expect a lot of that to happen in the present as we go through contract negotiations. And the unfortunate part too is Ketchikan is caught in this predicament where we have limited or reduced growth and we're competing against states in the lower 48 that are just exploding and booming. And so personnel, hopefully we get personnel that are dedicated to the job and which live in Ketchikan. And because there are other jobs available outside. And I don't want to penalize our long-term employees. We do have people that stay working for the city a long period of time. I was here for 38 years and the compensation plan means something to them in regards to continue to advance. Otherwise, when they stay stagnant, their buying power reduces because the cost of living continues to increase. But now we're talking about an equity adjustment that I think that is a matter of, as Abby had said, catching up with what happened with regards to negotiations. And I do agree that every contract is going to be different and it's going to affect different employees with the city differently. But at this particular point in time, I think that as we talked about the 8% for filling the position, I think the 10% is probably a reasonable, I guess, adjustment in regards to the staff that we're talking about. And I think that to get a better understanding on this, we do have to have meetings so we can look at and do some comparative stuff. And I wish and I hope, and I would ask the manager, with council approval, to make sure that our HR services gets the information into Alaska Municipal League, who are part of the study. So when you open that book, we can compare ourselves apple to apple within that range. And I think that this, whereas we're trying to align and compete with somebody we can't compete with in the lower 48. If we look around what's happening to communities within the state of Alaska, especially communities like Sitka and things that are about the same population because they're a combined city and rural. But they live with the same rate issues we do, the same power issues we do, the same issues we have in getting employees. And so I think if we can make a more accurate comparison within the Alaska Municipal League's wage study in regards to when we're hiring or compensating, when we start looking at those differentials, those kind of things, I think that would be, more of a help to us than trying to compare with Washington State or Oregon or California. Yes.
I would just like to state that I actually appreciate dealing with these balance up things, the 10% issues, when they come up immediately rather than later when you might not remember what. I mean, as soon as we found out how much the union workers were going to get paid, they factored them up and we got the information, and I think it's timely, actually. And also I would like to say that just to put a picture in your mind of what that 8% and the 10% means. If Chief Mattson, as acting chief, was making 8% above his grade, why would he accept the chief position at a 5% increase? With the 5% differential, it's less than an acting position pays.
Is there anything? Yeah, Dick.
Yeah, two things. Well, I forget the one of them. The figure we're looking at, if we look at 10%, it shows almost $52,000. That's for the next 7 months.
Correct.
That means it's over $100,000 a year that we're out talking about.
Yes.
And so I appreciate those employees, because I know most of them and they're good employees, but we still got to be physically responsible. Sometimes taking a job too, in my case anyway, was the job. It wasn't necessarily the pay. So you got to keep that in mind too.
Thank you. Anybody have anything new to ask? Hearing, seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Coos,
No.
Kistler,
Yes.
Zingy,
No.
Matani,
No.
Bradbury,
No.
Gas,
No.
Finnegan.
Yes.
That fails you on 5-2.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the next item. Which we have 7B, award of contract for transmission, distribution, and maintenance, Sturgeon Electric Company, Inc. Do I have a motion?
Your Honor, I move the City Council award contract number 25-37, transmission and distribution maintenance to Sturgeon Electric Company Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,088,070, including use of a $50,000 contingency, authorize a $590,000 budget transfer from the Electric Division Silvers Road Repair Capital Account to the Electric Division's Transmission and Distribution Line Maintenance Capital Account, authorize funding in the amount of $1,090,000 from the Electric Division's 2025 Transmission and Distribution Line Maintenance Capital Account, and authorize the acting general manager to execute the contract documents on behalf of the City Council.
Second.
Moving second. Question. What do you got, Lacey, on that?
Your Honor, This particular capital improvement item is actually one that we've had standing within the electric division budget for quite some time. We haven't actually utilized this capital improvement item in a while. But every year we set aside funds or request funds so that we can deal with ongoing transmission and distribution line maintenance across the system. As indicated in the memorandum from our electric division project manager, we did advertise for field bids for this particular project, and we only received one response, which was from Sturgeon, and it was significantly higher than the funds that we had initially budgeted. The electric division project manager did negotiate with Sturgeon to try to bring the scope and the price of the project down, and focused on the most urgently needed poles that need to be replaced. That's sort of the focus for this particular project, is replacing electric utility poles down to 22 individual poles. Unfortunately, it did not decrease the total cost of the project quite as much as we were hoping. And in order to effectuate and complete this project, we are requesting a budget transfer from within the electric division's capital improvement program from a different project. I will say that this is a very expensive project for essentially maintenance work that normally, if we were fully staffed with our line crew, we would be able to perform more of this level of work. But again, because a lot of this work has been deferred year over year over year, either through not having adequate capital funding or not having adequate fully staffed line crew, we're really getting to a point where it's dangerous to continue operating the way that we are with some of the state of our infrastructure. So while this is a very expensive project, and I do not believe funding at this level is sustainable for the electric division going forward year over year, this is a stopgap measure to make some progress with those maintenance projects in conjunction with what our line crew will also be performing in-house for this next year. So that's essentially the project in a nutshell. Happy to try to answer any questions, and project managers here as well.
So Lacey, this is the replacement of a pole, so we're taking the whole pole down. Is there any cost passed on to the underbill? We have pole agreements with providers and carriers, and we're gonna have to be moving. Are they gonna be moving their stuff, or are our contractor gonna be moving that stuff?
It's a great question, Your Honor, and I will ask Mark Adams to address that.
Good evening, Electric Project Manager Mark Adams. So your question regarding the communication company Tadkins on poles.
Yes.
The way it works is if the pole can be set, if a new pole can be set immediately adjacent to the old one, then the communications stay on the old poles. If the location cannot change at all, if the new pole has to literally go in the same hole as the old pole, then the communication lines get transferred in temporary fashion. Then it's up to the two respective communication companies to come in and make the permanent attachments.
So if we put in a new pole and we put all new transmission on top of it and our power stuff, is the understanding that maybe at a later date they'll come in and transfer that all over, so we'll get rid of the old pole?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's on them.
That is on there.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? Yeah, Jay.
Just a question of clarification. We're hiring this company to replace poles that need to be replaced because maintenance and stuff. Up to this point, I know we are short-staffed. How many of the poles have been dealt with by our own in-house crew?
The last couple of years, as short as we've been, there's probably been 10 to 15 poles a year or so. Years past, when we've had contracts, they've done 20 to 25 poles under a contract. Just looking back historically, that order of magnitude.
Thank you.
Mark, how many poles we got
in the system? That number escapes me. I want to say 4,700.
So we're not gaining. Thank you, Mark.
I have a question as well.
Yeah.
Mark, did it surprise you that there was only one bidder?
It was a surprise. Yes. We were hoping for 2, possibly 3 out of the main line contractors in town or in the state.
Understood. Yeah, it's definitely concerning when there's no competition. Your recommendation though would still be that it's critical enough, we need to just move forward with it.
We shoot this over and we reviewed the pole list, and these are poles that they're either old cedar poles that are rotting or they're woodpecker damaged poles. And we see a lot of that actually, especially the last few years, a lot of woodpecker damage starting. So they're at that point where we need to start getting them before they start failing.
What are we replacing them with, Mark?
They are a treated Douglas fir pole.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing, seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Z,
Yes.
Matani,
Yes.
Bradbury,
Yes.
Gas,
Yes.
Finnegan,
Yes.
Who's,
Yes.
and Kistler.
Yes.
And that passes, Chair.
Thank you. Brings us to item C, resolution number 252969, amending the Ketchikan compensation plan provided for the classification and position of a human resource generalist. Do I have a motion?
Your Honor, I move the City Council approve resolution number 25-2969, amending the City of Ketchikan compensation plan to provide the classification of the position of human resources generalist and establishing an effective date.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Hearing ceased, no second, motion dies to the last of a second. That is correct. Okay. Moves us on to vouchers. We have any vouchers?
None, Your Honor.
Manager report. Let me see what do you have for us today.
A few things, Your Honor. Since it was the talk of the day, I'll start with Wolf Point. As I included in my report, we've had several conversations with DOT staff over the last several weeks that may be of interest to the city council. We did have a meeting, the mayor and I and staff with DOT South Coast Regional Director Christopher Goins on the 23rd to talk about some of the concerns that were brought forth during the council meeting several weeks ago about work schedules and if shifting work would be prudent. And as I relayed in my report, just due to where the project was at and its progress and schedule, it wasn't prudent to really consider shifting those hours to for later in the day or evening hours. We were assured that blasting would be winding down, which I believe it has. But today we obviously saw that the scheduling of work within the area was in direct conflict with particularly our tourism transportation, but certainly the community as a whole with lane closures going down to one lane or just closures altogether. I did have a follow-up conversation with Chris Goins today to express the community's deep frustration and concern with that, which is why now if you're receiving notices from CCON tomorrow, there'll be a shift in that work schedule so that those closures won't happen until later in the day. Still not ideal, still going to impact things, but hopefully won't result in what happened today, in which we had a vessel at Ward Cove that was held because its passengers were still on buses trying to get back to the port. So we'll continue having those conversations with DOT. I think it's very clear at this point that doing that level of closure on a Thursday or a Friday, our highest volume days, is ill-advised. So we'll continue having those conversations. Again, we're involving Wolf Point. We've also had conversations with DOT about how the city can be made whole financially for the expenses that it incurred during that initial landslide, both in terms of emergency response and then our marine transportation costs to keep the community moving, because we did not receive that state declaration. So there's no state pathway for having emergency funding come to us. So DOT did assure us that they recognize that financial outlay that the city has. They want to make us whole, knowing that it was their project that caused this expense for the city and the citizens of Ketchikan. So continue to keep you updated on that. Regarding the charter amendment, outreach. We did have a public information meeting earlier this week on Tuesday at the library. Thank you to the council members that did attend that. That was appreciated. We continue to receive any feedback on the proposed amendments via email, and the online submission form. Again, the webpage that's on the city's website contains all the information pertaining to this process and the amendments that the council is currently considering. The council may have seen that at the last Borough Assembly meeting, the Borough Assembly directed their staff to work with city staff to amend the funding agreement between the city and the borough in terms of the non-area wide tax that is used to support library services. So soon I'll be meeting with borough staff to discuss what an amendment could look like. But just wanted to apprise the council that more than likely in the near future, we'll be discussing what that amendment might look like and how that may impact funding for supporting library services. I copied the city council earlier this week on a letter that went to Cindy Christian with the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation regarding our request for a limited alternative to filtration for our water system. This was kind of a perfunctory exercise here, as we've been talking about LAF with the state for over 5 years. But it was actually kind of a cool little milestone because this formal request was sort of the last step that the utility needed to make in order to be granted that limited alternative to filtration. So hopefully soon we will receive a positive affirmation that the state will grant us that limited alternative to filtration following the rules that it's promulgated and its statutes, and of course with EPA concurrence. What else would I want to mention? You'll also see in the manager's report regarding the temporary mobile restrooms. We did put out a bid for that. The responses that were received they varied wildly, I will say that, and there were concerns about the quality of the product that we would be receiving. So we determined that it was in the city's best interest at this time with no immediate rush to reject those bids, and we will be reissuing a solicitation with further clarification to hopefully have better assurances on the scope and the cost of the product that we may receive before we can bring that back to the city council for consideration. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, just because if you drive by and you hear it or you see it, you'll be going, what is going on? Why are we running diesels? It is pouring outside. This is our annual diesel run that we do in response to an annual outage that SEPA does so that it may perform some routine maintenance on its system. So we have disconnected from the intertie with SEPA. So we are operating solely on our own power between our own hydros and now our diesel to supplement that. This should be going on for a little less than a week. Hopefully by June 10th, we'll be back on the STI and back on SEPA power and we'll not have to run diesels, but this is something we do every year, but just wanted to let you and the community know that's what's going on. That's all I have, Your Honor.
A couple questions in regards to the LAF. Is there going to be some compliance that we have to do in regards to building out the system to meet all the requirements?
Yes, there will be, Your Honor. As you heard from Floyd Damron, our consultant with Jacobs Engineering a little while ago, while that we're able hopefully to receive this limited alternative to filtration, we will need to make adjustments to our system so that we are providing a high quality of disinfection to our water. But again, those improvements are much more manageable in scope and cost than moving to filtration, which would be extremely expensive. So it's not without cost, but it's a manageable cost and one that we can plan for.
Also, we have a lay on the table in regards to Garnet Diamond's request to discuss the temporary easement to install a 14-inch sewer line. Do you have any updates on that? I see in here, of course, that he had requested that allow them to consult an attorney at the city's expense, which I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. But he has some concerns there, and I just wondered how we're going about addressing those and communicate with Mr. Diamond.
So, Your Honor, we Public Works staff actually, I think just recently, if not today, made contact with Mr. Dyma about acquiring an easement so that we could put in that temporary sewer line for that project. So the letter is, and the questions are absolutely valid, but we continue to have conversation with him, and we will continue to have that conversation with him. Because obviously we want to make sure that any property owners that are involved or affected, that they're aware of it. So again, this is a very important project to replace the sewer lines, the sewer mains in that area. We want to do it with the least possible impact. We're hoping to work with nearby property owners so that we can effectuate the project and obviously do it in the off season and not cause further impact to the community. Again, with this particular project, we're really wanting to set up a temporary system rather than to bypass the system and discharge directly into the channel. That's not something we want to do. But that area, as you all know, is pretty congested. It's crowded. It's not at the city's in the city's control. We have to work with property owners to get that project done.
Thank you. And then I hope everybody had a chance to look at our sales tax report. We're down what, $85,000, something like that in regards to this year's collections. It's been trending a little bit different since the city split its winter summer tax schedule. I know at one point we're making about $21 million off sales tax, and we're down to about 19, and there's concerns about whether or not we'll meet that. So hopefully we'll have a budget discussion with some raw data that can help us figure out what we need to do in regards to sales tax to make sure that the city is receiving the amount that they received, or not going backwards in regards to what we're doing.
Absolutely, Honor. And just to remind the council that the sales tax report is really just the first 2 quarters. We see our highest spending in that 3rd quarter of the summer season. So we're hoping that we'll see that big uptick like we usually do, but we won't know those numbers for sure until probably October.
Yeah,
Yeah.
August is the first.
August, the preliminary report.
The highest season tax.
What will be available for the July meeting?
So we're having a initial budget discussion meeting in June. We can have some conversations with the borough to see if there's any available data, but it'll be pretty slim at that point. So I realize that having that conversation with the council at that time is difficult, not knowing what our revenue picture looks like. But I think at that time, for that meeting, we're just wanting to get general budget direction. By that second meeting, budget planning meeting, where we're talking about capital, again, we won't have a full picture of what our revenues are, but we're wanting to get general direction, knowing that we'll then tailor the budget based on when we have a better revenue picture.
Yeah, and I think some of that is also indicative of a grocery store outside the city limits now that we're not receiving, of course, sales tax on those sales. And there's also a hardware store out there too.
Yeah.
That will somewhat affect that. So it'll be interesting to see what it'll look like as we go forward. Thank you.
And we also have that new sales tax for the cruise ships. I don't know if that's, we're collecting the sales tax while they're in ports on their ships. That's
Yes.
probably not. That'll be something new for this year.
Thank you. Anything else for the manager? Yes, Dick.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Maybe sometime next meeting, Seth could talk to us about what's actually going on with Diamond, or we're rerouting the sewer and that thing there. So it's kind of confusing as to where it's at, when it's going to start, and what DOT did for us that one night was really confusing. They didn't give us many details, and I don't know whether he has any more details or not, but it would be helpful to be able to talk to the public when they ask questions. So maybe just a short presentation. Yeah, there was another one, but it went away.
I have to also, I spoke with Chris Goins today a little bit. He gave a call. We discussed the option, and he understands and is concerned also. He did mention, when we're gonna do that viaduct job, that the dynamics in Ketchikan in summer have changed with the added tourism busing, especially from the North Tongass end. And that over the years, the increase in traffic on a single lane highway had been more and more challenging. And he did mention that as they let contracts out in the future, they're gonna have to look at more night work in order to make sure those things work effectively, not only for them, but for the community, because they have a hard time getting their work done in those busy roadways, just as we have a hard time getting around, so. But he was very apologetic, and he said that he's working with the contractor, and it sounds like when they start up at 2, they're gonna go 24/7 until they have that portion of the project done, so they work through the weekend. And it's gonna cost them extra money, but they're willing to expend that for the benefit of the stopping the traffic problems we're having today, or reducing them. That was a good conversation. City council committee reports. We do have the Portman Advisory Board committee report from Jay, and we had 2 lay on the table, if I remember right. One was for Ketchikan Visitors Bureau, if I remember right,
And the LAPC.
and the LAPC. I thank you for those. City clerk's file.
I just wanted to let you know, when I mailed everybody out the DOT advisory, when we get those traffic notifications, so I sent that out to you this afternoon. And I've also posted it on our city website under Ketchikan News, if you click on that. I've been adding the latest traffic advisory notice there. If people ask you, what's going on, well, there's phone numbers of people they can contact there as well, because we get a lot of phone calls thinking that's our project. So if we direct them in that particular area, they can have a phone number of somebody to call and voice their concerns with, and then what's gonna be happening in the next few days. So,
I got a lot of calls today, and they understood it wasn't our project, but they wanted us to fix it.
we had a few of those too.
Yeah. City attorney's file. Not here, so we don't see anything there. I appreciate the report. Future agenda items.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I've got 2 agenda items that have been submitted to the clerk. One is to raise the wharfish fee by $2 as soon as we can. And the other is after our June budget meeting to make sure we have a hard cap of 5% on the budget department spending. And also, if there's any position that has been slated to be hired and has not been hired within 6 months, the money slated for that goes back into the general fund.
Thank you. I know they'll be coming to us and lay on the table. Okay. Mayor and council comments. Dick,
Nothing, wrong.
Jay.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the staff for helping us put these meetings together. The manager reports are very good so that we know what is going on, especially with the city and with the DOT projects. But my biggest kudos goes to our Ports and Harbors Department. With a minimum crew, our staff is doing wonders with our harbors, fixing things that need to be fixed that in other communities are taking a longer time with a bigger crew. And their diligence with handling what's going on with the port. Last week, we had a cruise ship line snapped and the gangplank tumbled over. The crew was diligent. They got in there and took care of the gangplank, and passengers were delayed by only about a half an hour and made it to the ship very safely. And then my conversation with the Ports and Harbors Director, they went and examined Berth 1 to see that there was no damage, and that they did immediately. So our Ports and Harbors crew are amazing.
Thank you. Abby,
Yeah, none tonight.
Riley,
Nothing, right?
Jack,
Nothing for me, Your Honor.
Colette,
Nothing.
Judy.
Nothing wrong.
Well, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank and recognize our fire department for their quick response to a house fire here the other day. It was a catastrophic fire, very hot, lots of flames, and it was in a real tight neighborhood where houses were close together. They had a couple of minor injuries of staff, but overall, they did a fantastic job of handling that fire, getting it knocked down and monitoring it and getting it put out. And, you know, this is why we fund and support our fire department, hoping that we never have to use them. But when you get an outcome like this, where it could have been by far worse than what we have today, I'd like just to recognize the fire department for their effort. So thank you. And I'd like to thank the people of the community. I know that it has been difficult with the rain, the rough roads. I mean, it just goes on and on. And we have to be a very resilient community, and the individuals that live here have to be resilient to stay here and go through this. It's been probably one of the coldest, dampest springs I can remember for a long time, and I can hear the effect on our community in regards to that. I get comments every day about the weather or about. I'd like to thank them for their patience. With that, we have item 15, which is an executive session, request for an executive session to discuss strategies related to negotiations of a new collective bargaining agreement between the city of Ketchikan and the International Association of Firefighters Local 2761 to replace the existing contract that expires December 31st, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Your Honor, I move that the City Council declare that, consistent with the Acting Assistant City Manager's recommendation, it is in the best interest of the city to discuss strategies related to the negotiation of a successor collective bargaining agreement between the City of Ketchikan and the International Association of Firefighters Local 2761 to replace the existing contract that expired on December 31st, 2024 in executive session. In accordance with that finding, I further move that the City Council enter into executive session pursuant to KMC 2.04.025A1A to discuss said negotiations and related subjects, the knowledge of which could have an adverse impact on the city's finances and its ability to negotiate favorable labor agreements.
Second.
Then move and thank Abby,
Your Honor, I will need to abstain from this executive session due to my volunteer status.
as we discussed. Thank you. And after we go into executive session, you are excused. So with that, is there any further discussion? Hearing seen none, would you please call the roll?
Bradford, or you staying, Matani,
Yes.
Zingy,
Yes.
Kissler,
Yes.
Booth,
Yes.
Finnegan,
Yes.
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 With that, we'll recess into executive session. You need 5 minutes? Anybody need a break? Everybody okay? All right. Let's move into executive. Come out of the executive session, we met in executive session, and gave direction. With that, do I have a motion?
Adjourned.
All those, opposed, hearing and seeing none,